Welcome everyone, first of all, and I'm really pleased you can join us today. We've got a fairly, packed agenda for today, so I'm going to try and keep to time for every segment. And the first part of it, we're going to talk about the water crisis. And we've got Eric Valentine with us, who I'll introduce in a minute, and Chloe Macfarland, who are going to lead on that. And when they've done that, then we're opening it up to 35 minutes about that, of questions and comments from everyone here. And then after that, we've got Zoey Cooper joining us. And Zoey used to be a member of Encaf, and she then went to become a climate change officer in Exmouth in Devon. And so she's going to talk about that. So it's really quite an interesting sort of hour and a half, I hope, that we have. So let's first talk about the water crisis. It was in our core group, someone suggested that we do this because we've never really dealt with the water crisis in any depth, and it is a real issue and is becoming increasingly a real issue as we look at the changing temperatures, extreme weather we're getting, and we look at the infrastructure of our water system. And so we've got with us today Eric Valentine, who is a visiting professor in Newcastle University and was a professorial fellow at Charles Darwin University in Australia. And he was also the last chairman of the Foundation for Water Research, which is really great because clearly he knows a great deal about water. So, Eric, I'm really pleased you're here today, and it's really nice to have you. Now, you've had what I'm going to do, let me tell everyone, I'm going to ask a few questions and then we'll go to Chloe. And then after that, we'll open it up to everyone. Okay. So let me ask you first, Eric. I mean, you've had a long lifetime studying water and you've been to various places like in Australia, Newcastle and so on. And, you have seen how the climate has changed, how our infrastructure's got worse. What's made you to believe throughout your life and your career that we are beginning to face a water crisis?
Well, thanks, Francis. My career is now 50 years long to date. And I guess I could go back to the 80s and say that when I was living and working in New Zealand, you could observe things that were changing at that time. And it became more and more apparent through time that climate change was a big issue in terms of water supply, rainfall, and so on. So I've been convinced for many years, and it's been a great disappointment in my life and my career that we haven't been able to convince the politicians much faster to take some notice of it. But it's becoming ever more apparent, that there are issues with climate change, rainfall, frequency, duration, intensity, etc., etc.
It's a global problem, isn't it? I mean, I gather that some estimates are that our freshwater supply or our demand of fresh water by 2050 will exceed the supply of water by 40%. Now, from a global perspective, how serious is that?
Well, actually, it's not 2050, Francis, it's 2030. That statistic is a global one, and it's rather more urgent than the 2050 makes it sound, I'm afraid. Well, there are already many areas in crisis. The conflicts over water are, there are many of them. Even within India itself, there are 25 scraps going on, issues across the country about water. But it is very serious. You've got to remember that the planet is covered in water, but only 3% of that actually. Oops.
Okay, go on.
Only 3% of that is actually fresh water, and only 1% of the total water is actually available as fresh water for potential consumption. So it's a very small fraction of the total global water body.
It's quite interesting what you said, that the crisis is not just the supply, it's the impact on society, that it creates conflict. And there's already wars, isn't there, over water supply, and that could get worse.
Indeed, and the potential for that is quite enormous. I mean, the state in certain parts of Africa, I mean, you could actually put the Somalian conflicts down largely to water and Eritrean problems as well. But the Chinese are damming the upper what is the Brahmaputra in China. They've already dammed the Mekong high up as well, and these are actually causing real tensions in Southeast Asia which depend on those rivers for their supply. So that yes, I'm afraid there are, and you don't need to mention the Middle East, but there are water conflicts going on. They have been going on for a long time, and the potential for them to get worse is huge.
There's that particular problem, but here in the UK, sometimes we don't think about it, do we? We think we have plenty of water, and that it's not something we need to think about. In fact, the meteorology department, I think, said that by 2050, and I may be wrong on the dates again, but by 2050, our winters will be 30% wetter than they are now. And so if you're living in this country, you think, well, we've got plenty of water, but I think the Environment Agency has said that by about that time, 2050, 2055, we will be short of water by something like 5 billion litres per day just for home public consumption and 1 billion litres per day for industrial and agricultural production. So it is a problem, isn't it, Eric, for the UK as well?
Absolutely, and climate change is contributing to that. We're regarded as a wet island, but we're also a very densely populated island, and the hydrology is such that it varies quite a lot across this island. So some parts are good, some parts are not so good, and the short-term variations in weather cause problems because there's a lack of storage in reservoirs, which have been sort of really. The last one that was built in Britain was Cassington, and that's 30 years ago, I think. There's an issue with storage. There's also an issue with leakage in the networks, and that actually constitutes quite a large loss. So, given the short-term variability of weather and the demand by large populations, yes, we are looking at problems.
I mean, you mentioned leakages, and that's an infrastructure problem. And I read today that leakages cost us something like 3.3 billion litres per day. And if we're going to be short by 5 billion litres per day in 2050, 2055, there is a big issue that we could deal with, isn't there?
Absolutely. And the water companies may be claiming that they've been looking at this for a long time, but they haven't made an awful lot of progress, in my opinion. And it is my opinion. I can't back that up across the country. But I do know locally that it is something they could do much better at, And that would sort of that would answer a lot of problems without even considering demand management, which will be sort of on the cards with the way things are going.
An infrastructure problem, but is there other problems as well, like population growth and climate change? And obviously, we're interested in climate change. So, I mean, if you can tell us something about how you think climate change will impact on our water supply, that would be really, really good.
Yes, I mean, we talk about rainfall intensity and more frequent storms.
I'll have to go back in there.
The gaps between those in terms of droughts are actually quite serious, and that's where the need for storage comes in. So the climate change aspect sort of drives both ends, the dry and the wet, and to more extreme conditions, which needs managing, and that's something that hasn't really been addressed because, as I say, the last reservoir that was built was 30 years ago. I know there are some being constructed now in the south, but they're relatively small local issues, and they're needed, but more may be needed. And of course, the population in these areas is really not very keen on having them. So there's a social issue to grasp as well.
It's not just a problem, isn't it, about the quantity of water, it's also the quality of water as well, because agricultural pollution, industrial pollution, sewerage in rivers is a real problem. That's a growing problem, isn't it? And that's to do with the way that it's managed. but it's also, to do with a number of other things as well. I mean, how important is it to deal with the quality of water as well as the quantity?
Well, extremely important. Water supply is generally well treated when it's handled and put into the network. But if you're dealing with a lower quality to start with, then that's going to be more of a costly exercise in terms of treating it. But it is quite an issue in terms of well, let's treat the water supply first. You have to have the availability to be able to treat it. People imagine that the cost of water is related to the cost of treatment, and that's actually true. But it's the quality in the water bodies, the rivers and lakes, that has deteriorated. Suddenly, in the early 2020s, there seemed to be a big drop in the water quality, and a big increase in spills. And I think one of the reasons for that sudden apparent increase was the fact that measurement happened. Prior to that, there wasn't enough monitoring going on, and the sort of the event data monitoring that's available now, if you look at the Environment Agency's numbers, it suddenly jumps up in the sort of about 2022, partly because of the measurement, but it's also jumped up because of population increase, development, and more use of water for other reasons, industrial reasons, even the just cooling a data center is consuming water in a way which is rather strange because it's not reused often. Many aspects like that. Okay, a lack of regulation probably as well.
Okay, so we have this problem. By the way, can I just tell everyone that comes on, if you could mute yourself, please, so you don't come on the screen until, we open it up. That would help a lot. Okay, so we have the problem of quantity and quality. What do you think we can do about it in the UK to tackle both the quality of water and also to tackle water pollution, the quantity of water rather, and also to tackle water pollution?
Well, one of the great sadnesses I have of my time is the fact that combined sewer outfalls have not been properly addressed. So we're spilling pollution into water bodies that might be reused as abstraction points. But I think above all else, regulation has not been properly applied. The law hasn't been applied in terms of by the regulators, and that's sort of that faults many, including the Environment Agency. There's a need to upgrade sewage treatment works, and that hasn't happened. That's both for capacity of the sewage volume that they're treating and for the quality. And they actually need more storage. And I say again, we need to reduce the CSOs, the combined sewer outfall flows, which seem to have run away from the water companies because they didn't actually, and this is a personal view, they didn't actually apply improved infrastructure in the way that they should have done in the past.
I mean, finally, basically, you think we're not doing enough at the moment, both nationally, through government, through industry, and ourselves individually as well.
Well, individually, that's something we can address. The demand management may, in fact, force the reduction in availability per capita. But you get to extreme situations in some parts of the world where desalination is regarded as the norm. In the Gulf, that's how they get the water. In Australia, there are backup systems which involve desalination in Sydney and Perth, and ultimately, in this country, we may need to consider transfer schemes, which is going to cause quite a lot of social upheaval in certain places if it's muted. I mean, in the northeast of England, we're quite happy that Kielder Reservoir, which is was the largest reservoir in Europe in its time, was over-designed, apparently, so that the supply is actually sort of much more secure than it is elsewhere. That is also part of a water transfer scheme, which is never used to take water to the Wear and to the Tees for industrial reasons. But there will be pressure for water transfer schemes elsewhere, I'm sure, to alleviate the problems in difficult areas.
Okay, well, let's leave it there and go to Chloe. And Eric's going to stay on. And when Chloe's finished, we're going to take questions to both of them, though I know Chloe has to go fairly soon after. But you mentioned, I mean, we talked about supply of water, that whether it exists or not, but there's a demand side as well. And we who consume water are part of that demand side. And that raises questions, what can we do to help the water crisis by reducing our consumption in different ways or making our consumption more efficient? And we've got Chloe Macfarland with us now, who's from Waterwise, which says on a website, it's not for profit organisation that actively supports and challenges everyone that they work with to develop high water efficiency for the benefit of people, the environment and the economy. So Chloe, if you'd like to come on now and just introduce yourself and tell us who you are, and then hopefully we can go to your presentation.
Fabulous. Thank you. I'm Chloe Macfarland. I am the campaigns manager here at Waterwise. So as Frances said, we're a not-for-profit. Our vision is super simple and powerful. We want water to be used wisely every day, everywhere, by everyone. So thanks, Eric. By the way, your insights were so interesting, and it makes for a very smooth transition now into my slides. Now that I guess that we've talked about the scale of the challenges, I'd like to explore what we can actually do, and this is as individuals and communities, to make a difference. So, like I said, at Waterwise, our vision is really simple yet powerful, and we want water to be used wisely every day, everywhere, by everyone. And this means embedding sustainability and essentially at the heart of everything we do, to be honest. Water efficiency isn't just about saving a resource, it's about ensuring fair access, protecting nature and building resilience across all communities. And at Waterwise, we also recognise that some people and places are more vulnerable to impacts of water crisis than others. So our approach has always been actively including diverse voices and ensuring that everyone has the opportunity and the tools to be part of the solution. So the reality is we're facing a water crisis right now, and only 3% of the world water is fresh water. And here in the UK, water stress is growing, specifically at the moment in the southeast, and with climate change making droughts more frequent and unpredictable. And since the 1960s, our personal water use, it's risen by 60%, and today we use 5 billion litres more every single day. I think earlier, Frances, you said it was 4 billion, but currently we're actually sat at 5 billion, which is pretty scary. And if we do nothing, we are on track for a shortfall by a couple more billion by 2050. So this isn't just about taps running dry. It's about protecting wildlife, reducing emissions, and making sure water is available for future generations. And water efficiency, we're at the stage now, it's not optional, it's essential. So I kind of covered who I work for at the very start, but a bit more of a deep dive in who we are. So Waterwise, we are the UK's leading independent voice on water efficiency. We work to influence policy, we support innovation and help people and businesses reduce their water use. So we also speak up for the environment, but also for people, particularly those, like I said, who may not have been included in water and climate conversations beforehand. And we live by 3 values. So that's people, pioneer, and purpose. And that means putting people at the heart of the solution, and driving forward new ideas and staying grounded in the bigger picture. And it's just creating a fairer, more sustainable future for us all. So what we do, our work, it spans 5 core areas. So we do policy and advocacy. We work closely with government and regulators, and this is to influence laws and strategies that shape how water is used and saved across the UK. We do campaigns, so you might know us from Water Saving Week or Water Night. So these are our sort of biggest flagship campaigns. They're national ones that reach thousands with water saving advice every year. We do projects and research, so we run pilots and research programs to trial and scale what works. We also do training, so we offer accredited water efficiency training for professionals and organisations, and also households as well, so individuals who want to be part of that change. And as well as that, we also offer checkmark certification. So we certify buildings and spaces that meet the highest water efficiency standards. So together, these pillars allow us to drive change at every level, essentially. So that's from Parliament, literally, to our kitchen taps. So this brings us to the main question, is what can we do as individuals and as a community to address the crisis? And the truth is, there is a lot we can do. So everyday actions, they really do add up. The average person uses 140 litres of water a day, and much of this is actually invisible. So this is, hidden in overfilled kettles, long showers or showers over 5 minutes, leaking toilets. They all contribute to that 1.5 billion litres wasted in the UK homes daily. And that also means that we have huge potential. If we all make shifts collectively, the impact will be enormous, and saving water, cutting energy bills, and also lowering emissions. So yeah, in terms of individually what we can do, we'll start with like the simple stuff, I guess. There are easy daily changes. So these are things as small as like turning off the tap when you brush your teeth. You can cut your shower by 1 minute. So yeah, I think the average at the moment, most people is recorded around 5 minutes. But if you cut that 1 minute and get it down to 4, and that's the kind of sweet spot. We actually have on our website a Spotify playlist which covers only 4-minute songs. So yeah, it's perfect for singing along in the shower if that's your sort of thing. But another area to look at is like fixing a leaky loo. So just one leaking toilet can waste up to 400 litres a day. And this is actually something we've just released a campaign on, and it's called the Leaky Loo Challenge. And it's a super simple concept. It's essentially just a great way to check if you have a silently leaking toilet. And all you need to do is essentially take a dry piece of loo roll, and then you place it at the back of the bowl, a good couple of inches above the water line. And if you leave that for 10 minutes and you come back and it's wet, that's your indication that you actually have a leak. I think a lot of us associate having a leaky toilet with you'd hear it, or, it would be, you'd see it, it'd be visual or auditory. But no, a lot of the time it's totally non-detectable. But yeah, our push is to try and get everyone to test their toilets. So yeah, we are asking people to log their results via our survey on our Leaky Loo campaign page, which is on our website. And by that, it just really helps us track how many leaks are being detected and the insights into the issues that, like I said, it's almost impossible to monitor at scale. A couple of other ways to, in your routine to save water. So use a bowl when you're washing up, and only boil the water you need. And then for those who want to go further, there are bigger steps as well. So that looks like fitting dual flush toilets or water efficient shower heads, installing rainwater harvesting for your garden. So that's like water butts, and choosing appliances and products that have met water saving credentials. But yeah, so whether small or large, every action really does matter, and they're especially powerful that when we come together, they can create real impact and make it into a habit, really. So in terms of communities, what we can do, communities are, of course, really powerful drivers of change. So when neighbours, schools, workplaces and councils come together, the ripple effect can also be extremely huge. You can share tips, raise awareness. You can check out our website, and we've got so much information on how to save water on there. We'd be delighted to also share any resources if anybody specifically has any areas of interest they'd like to chat through. And you can also encourage your local council or housing provider to install water efficient appliances by reaching out to them. And another way is joining campaigns like ours and sharing them. So that really helps amplify our reach. And that's campaigns like I mentioned, our Leaky Loo, Water Night, and Water Night is where households pause their water use to reflect on its value. It's a bit similar to Earth Hour, but instead of not using electricity, it's not using non-essential taps. And this is how we build water resilience from the ground up, and it's through that shared knowledge and collective action, really. So just a bit of a deeper dive on our campaigns. So our campaigns are designed to have goals. They are designed to spark action. And many people don't connect the climate emergency with water or realize how their habits affect supply and demand. So our campaigns such as Water Saving Week, Water Night, these really help bridge that gap and make that connection clear. And they offer like relatable, tangible solutions for every lifestyle. So quick tips to long-term change. And we also support schools and businesses and community groups to get involved, because the more people that we can reach, the more resilient we really become. So looking at our strategic role in the water crisis, so at Waterwise, we play a key strategic role in this. So we work behind the scenes quite frantically, to be honest, and that is to raise awareness and understanding of water scarcity. We push for water efficiency in regulations and housing policy. We secure investment in water-saving infrastructure. We champion innovation and tech, smart meters, water reuse system, and we bring people and organisations together to co-create solutions. And it's going to take all of us, individuals, industry and government, pulling in the same direction. And that's essentially what Waterwise is all about. We are here to essentially try and lead the way on that. So ultimately, water efficiency is about more than just saving water. It's about building knowledge, behaviour change, and creating lasting impact. So yeah, we invite everyone to take action. So I would encourage everyone to explore our resources on our website. So that's practical tips to interactive tools, educational pieces. We have a water impact calculator. Like I said, we have educational materials on there as well. So materials for school, home or workplace. And we also have water literacy program, which is piloting now. And we actually have fully funded places available. So if anyone is interested, I'd be happy to pick that up if you drop me a message, or you can find it on our website or the Water Literacy Programme website. But yeah, you don't have to be an expert to make a difference. It's just being informed and willing to act, really. But yeah, that's all from me.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I mean, that's really good because you told us the individual things we can do. And, you know, again, I read somewhere that if we do quite a lot of things, we can save up to 40% on our individual consumption, and that's a real important thing. So now's the time for people to ask questions here. But while you're thinking of it, let me ask one question that's come up in the chat, and it's come up by two or three people, and maybe Eric, you can take this, and that is, you know, we're depending a lot on AI technology. We're depending a lot on Google. We are setting up data centers, and this is taking a huge amount of water. Is that going to be a real problem for us in the future?
Well, it's certainly a big demand. I mean, notwithstanding the huge amounts of power that they require, and the power inevitably involves water somewhere. You know, and the cooling of these things requires a lot of water. So I think it hasn't really been anticipated well as to how much effect it might have. I don't think. People have just been sort of saying, "Oh, we'd like one here." You know, the bigger the better, but they haven't actually sort of thought about the environmental consequences probably yet.
Okay, well, we've got one hand up, and I don't know if I've pronounced your name right, but it's Oleon Pekan. I know you're from Nigeria because you've been on before and you're involved in waste management there. So would you like to give us your point or your question?
All right. Good evening, Francis. Hello.
Hello, we hear you.
So good evening. My name is Hassan Yoloni from Nigeria. Please, my question is to Eric. Is Eric on the line? Is he on?
Yes.
All right. My question is the fact that why are you silent about brine effluent? The brine effluent, the downside of the desalination. You're talking about the brine effluent, which is one of the downside of desalination. And what are your thoughts about water harvesting? What I thought about water harvesting, because let me learn. Water harvesting is, we can take a cue from a country like Malta and Cyprus. Cyprus is doing about 90% of treated wastewater. Then Malta is also doing 60% of treated wastewater. So what are you thought about the brine effluent of desalination and rainwater harvesting? That's my question from Nigeria.
Okay,
Well,
thanks.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I mean, to talk about brine, first of all, I mean that really is solved by dispersion. If you have to use desalination in the first place, it's the power consumption that would concern me mostly. But I think after that, it's a matter of dispersion to prevent the concentrations causing any problem in the local environment. If you can avoid desalination, so much the better. In terms of reusing water, and I think that's what you were getting at in terms of
Yes.
wastewater treatment.
Exactly, wastewater treatment. Yes.
At one stage in this country, some of the long sea outfalls in the North Sea were actually getting to tertiary treatment, which is almost of drinking water standard. So that possibility does exist. But again, you're talking about a balance of spending on resources and managing the system, and overall it's not the favorite answer, but it is one in certain parts of the world.
Is that what you're doing in Nigeria, where you work there? Could you tell us? Because obviously your question relates to your own experience.
Exactly. In Nigeria, we do, we've started a bit of rainwater harvesting in Nigeria, and then secondly, there's improved water, reuse and all that. And then in terms of hello, are you listening?
Yeah, we hear you.
All right then. In terms of agriculture, because given the decoupling effect of climate change and water scarcity in Nigeria, so we focused on agriculture sector in the sense that we harvest the rain and we deploy that in dry season like that. Then secondly, we've gone into climate smart agriculture. So those are one of the measures we use in tackling water crisis in Nigeria. Then that's why in Nigeria we big about rainwater harvesting and the rest. So that's my thought about that.
I think I probably misinterpreted what you said, and I think you're talking about rainwater harvesting. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then in terms of agriculture, we're talking about climate smart agriculture.
Right.
So we climate smart agriculture.
I think in terms of just touching on rainwater harvesting for a moment, it's certainly widely used in Australia for domestic consumption, and its potential for agricultural use, I guess, depends on what sort of agriculture you're talking about and where it is. But yes, I think all of these things have to be part of the overall package somewhere.
All right. Thank you very much.
Right, thanks. Is there anyone else with their hands up? I mean, I've got some other questions that people have written in. I mean, write them in, please, if you want. But if you want to ask them, that would be great too. Zoey, you're going to be performing in a minute, but you've got a question to ask, so go ahead.
Yeah, we try and run campaigns in Exmouth to encourage people to be more sort of water wise, and I'm frequently met with two objections. One is, well, we have so much rainfall. Why do we need to, why do you want us to save water is one. And then the other one is we have a huge problem with sewage in Exmouth at the moment, and there's a lot of anger towards South West Water. So the second kind of pushback is, well, it's down to the water companies. They're not managing our water properly. Why should we bother when they're not bothering? So I just wondered if you had any advice, any kind of quick answers that I can go back to them with in a nutshell, Eric, would be very helpful.
Thank you. I think on the rainfall side, it's the variability that we get in changing climate with intensity and drought and intensity, and it's not actually being absorbed in the same way. The actual overall total hasn't changed very much, but it's the way in which it falls, and I think it's the management of that process in terms of storage probably. But coming to the issue of not helping out the local water company, that's rather shooting yourself in the foot. I think you need to realise that they need to spend the money on the sewage treatment process, storage of it, and doing it properly. And I think anything to encourage that to happen is welcome. I'm not sure those are quick answers though.
Thank you. That is helpful. Thank you.
I mean, someone said, to add to that, I mean, what are the best ways, Eric, to get water companies to change their practices? Because it relates to what Zoey asked as well, because there's a lot of distraction in Devon, as there is throughout the country, about water companies. So how can we approach them? What can we do to improve their practices?
Well, I think the application of the regulation about, the regulating bodies haven't really performed in the way they should have done. But if you look around the world and you look at the mix of privatized and public water supply companies and authorities, there's no real evidence, as far as I can see anywhere, that one is better than the other. And if you take the great bastion of private enterprise, the United States, half of their water supply is through local public bodies, and there's no way to differentiate between their efficiencies. So putting that aside, how do you get them to respond? I think the severe application of the law as it stands by the regulator, which has not happened, that's my position on it.
Okay, and David, you have your hand up. Well, if you keep speaking, could you mute yourself, please? Because you keep coming on the screen. It would help a lot if you did.
Yes, the last question was one I asked, but there's a little extra bit. Because what they say in the Waterwise thing, most people in the UK are not aware of how the climate emergency impacts our water supply. How do we make the CEOs and investors in water companies aware of how the climate emergency impacts our water supply?
Oh, I think they know. I just think they count all the money in the bank. That's the trouble. I can't imagine that they're in any way at this stage ignorant of those connections with water supply and climate change. I think we're coming back to the regulation again. It just has not been satisfactorily applied. The investors in water companies have been allowed to take out too much money, which should have been spent on infrastructure. That keeps coming back to the regulation, really. If the law doesn't if it isn't effective, then it needs to be made more effective. I don't think we're going to get these companies back in public hands easily in the near future. So we've got to make the system work really as it is.
Okay, Aurora, you've got your hand up.
Yes, obviously, water is very, very important for agriculture. And I wanted to ask if you can tell us a few words about how agriculture was affected by all the changes, the sort of like big rains that destroyed crops, and then the dry weather, and what kind of things are being done, if you are aware of, to, to mitigate against these changes.
Well, in this country, that's a long story, but I was a couple of years ago in Nepal. I was asked to look at an irrigation scheme, which was failing in terms of its construction for details I won't go into. It was to do with the soil mechanics, but the system is a very large one. Very large canals, hundreds of kilometers of them, and it was designed to supply water to a dry area in Nepal, if in the lower agricultural areas. And that was their attempt to actually mitigate the lack of water supply in that area, which has been changing as well. But it unfortunately has taken much longer to achieve than they considered. It was one of their grand projets, one of their big projects in Nepal, and it was a national embarrassment for them that it failed and it's taken so long to achieve. Did I get to the point there about that's one of the ways of doing it? In other parts of the world, in dry parts like Australia, the climate there is so variable in a way which is really hard to fathom elsewhere, that you get years of enormous productivity, and then you get a drought for 5 years. So it's really sort of a severe variability that they're working with. I think elsewhere, it's slightly outside my remit, but I think in the UK, you can see that a lot of farmers have actually started to modify the types of crops they grow. And some of them are irrigating where they haven't in the past, and that's a bit risky because we don't know what the effect on supply is. But there are various sort of reactions to the changes, I think.
Okay, Peter, you've got your hand up.
All right. Hello?
Vika.
Yes, hi there. Thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
I can hear you.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Hello to everyone, and thank you for this wonderful meeting. A question that I had was, I'm not sure if it's related to the conversation, but of course we're facing water crisis around the world, and one of the places I come from, Afghanistan, and Afghanistan is on the verge, is already living a tragedy with the drought and losing of farmland and all those things. Millions of people are not only living a tragedy, but also facing a much larger tragedy. Kabul, the city of Kabul itself, is on the verge of becoming the very first city in modern days to run out of water. And I'm wondering what the global reaction is to this. Part of it is that anything that happens anywhere in the world would affect even us who live in the Western countries. We would be affected one way or another by all of this, but also it's the lives of millions of people that don't really get the much deserved attention that they should be getting. So I'm wondering, one part of it is the political aspect, and politicians do what politicians do. Another part of it is the moral responsibilities of scientists and people that are in humanitarian work and all that. I wonder if there is any conversation or any attention at all to what happens in Afghanistan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, because I read that Kabul is likely to be the first city to run out of water. So that's a real, not just a physical problem, but a trauma, emotional problem. So,
Absolutely.
The question, I think, is a really relevant one.
If you actually, Cape Town in South Africa came within 2 days of actually running out of water, and they managed that by a very sort of positive social sort of adjustment to their water use behaviour at the last minute. But yeah, I think the areas which are in the planet which are threatened with ever longer droughts and drier conditions, I think like Afghanistan, that is going to put pressure on the populations to actually move. And I think we can already see that, that's already happening from some parts of the world. And I think, international governments have to turn their minds to how they might best manage that for the globe's benefit, the people's benefit. But it's a very difficult one, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Someone else asked a question about the impact of the water crisis on migration, that people, whenever resources are short, in history, populations have got up and moved, and we're likely to face that on a grand scale, which is a real problem. Olivia Picon, again, you got your hand up.
Thank you.
All right, good. All right. My question is to Eric. Eric, hello?
Yes.
All right then. There's something you missed out on, the benefit embedded in energy transition, because from the research I've made, I've realized the fact that energy transitioning to renewable energy can save up to 95% of water abstraction. So what are your thoughts about transitioning to renewable energy? Represents perhaps the lowest hanging fruit in terms of reduction in water abstraction by 95%. So what are your thoughts about transitioning to renewable energy and the benefit embedded in such transition? That's my question.
Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. Are you thinking of the adopting renewable energy?
What are the impact of renewable energy in terms of reducing water abstraction? The impact of renewable energy, transitioning to renewable energy, in terms of reduction in water abstraction. So that is my question.
Yes. Well, I mean, what sort of water abstractions are you thinking of? Are you thinking of water supply and some groundwater supply areas, or
exactly, groundwater supply?
Yeah. Well, how we get the energy, if we can get it from renewable resources, that's going to make the whole process more efficient, isn't it? Rather than using fossil fuels or other means. So I think that's just part of the story, really. I can't see specifically that it's a problem so much as an advantage to use renewable energy.
All right. Okay.
Anthony? Can you unmute? Okay.
Yeah, my question really relates to embedded water in the food that we eat, and it hasn't really been mentioned. Is that something that we as individuals should be thinking about? And are people aware of the amount of water in some types of food that people eat?
Well, yes, it's not. I mean, it's not just food; it's other manufactured goods. I mean, jeans are blue jeans are the big villain. They take many cubic meters of water to manufacture. I remember a story of a professor I knew. He was told off by his daughter for letting the water run while he was brushing his teeth. And he looked at her blue jeans, the second pair that month, I think, and said, "Well, you've used 30 cubic meters already." So yes, I think there are issues with manufacturing processes and waste of water, but certain things like growing cotton in Australia is a form of water export. In Queensland, they grow cotton from using water from the Murray system, and it's so water hungry that it's just like sort of sending water abroad, and they don't have it to send abroad. But I think rice is a huge consumer of water in the way it's grown, but it happens to be one of the most important staple cereals on the planet. So there's a little bit of an issue there with how you deal with that. There are several other foodstuffs, I guess, that use a lot.
There was a question in the chat as well about the impact of water and the quality of water on our health, like having plastic particles, PM25 in the water and so on. Do you have anything that you can say about that and what we can do about that?
Yes, I was involved in a study of plastic in the water environment a few years ago, and I was actually uh, very saddened by the amount that has managed to get into the environment and to where it has arrived. And we've all seen the pictures on documentaries and so on, but it's even worse than that as it breaks down. Um, I think that's a problem that really might only be addressed in this country by actually having improved sewage treatment processes that capture it. And that's not easy.
Okay, is there anyone else? Not at the moment. I'll ask you one final question then. I mean, we're talking about the problem, we're talking about supply, we're talking about the demand side and so on. And we're a community group, and there are community groups all over the UK and all over the world combating, trying to tackle climate change, seeing what they can do. How do you think we as a community can take a part in tackling this problem?
Well, I think what Chloe Macfarland was talking about is in large part what we need to concentrate on is using water wisely, not abusing it, um, changing the way we look after our gardens, for example, and the sort of systems within the houses that use it, and not to have any leaky pipes. Just don't waste it. And I think that's what individuals can do.
That's about behaviour change. Is there things that communities can do in terms of advocacy, campaigning, trying to convince local authorities, should it be in the local plan, for example, someone asked, dealing with governments, dealing with companies who are involved in the water industry? Have we a role in doing that as well? And in what way do you think we can be effective?
Well, I think groups like yourselves, must be having some impact. I would hope locally. Um, it's going to vary a great deal depending on where you are because the issues do vary a great deal as well. But I think putting pressure from local campaigns on politicians and water companies is the best way to raise that awareness.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Eric. You've got a lot more questions coming through than I thought, and there are quite a few we haven't dealt with, but I think we've dealt with most of them in the chat. And thank you all of you who've contributed with questions. That's really great, and I hope we can keep in touch because I think what you've said has been very valuable, and I think people have found it incredibly interesting. Okay, so we'll go to the next item, if that's okay, on the agenda. And please stay, Eric, if you'd like. We'd love you to stay.
Absolutely.
It will be good. We've got with us now, Zoey Cooper. I'm sure some of you will remember Zoey. Zoey, some years ago, not that many, about a couple of years ago, lived in Enfield, and she was involved as an activist in climate change. She was in Extinction Rebellion. She came and worked with Encaf as well. She did a lot of work with us in Encaf. I mean, she did a schools project that we did, which that was a competition in schools for students to write an essay or paint a picture about climate change. She got involved in the festival. We put on a festival about 3-4 years ago. And that festival, we had 100 events in about 9 days, and Zoey helped that. And then she went others, and she went to Exmouth, and she became a climate change manager for Exmouth Council. So Zoey, if you're there, if we could start by asking you, I mean, you've done this transition. You've moved from the Extinction Rebellion activist to the Encaf member, and then moved to Exmouth and become an officer. I mean, how did you manage that transition? Was it difficult? Did you have different problems to face? Was it perceptually different as well?
It was in a lot of ways it was different because as well as being a climate activist, I also was a content and brand director for a creative and marketing agency. So I was going out and helping to sell fast cars and beauty products and things like that, which I got to the point where I was thinking this is completely ridiculous and I don't have any faith in these products. And so I couldn't really marry the two things, being a climate activist and doing my current job. So I wanted to downsize and have a slower pace of life, and actually was moving to Devon, where I went to uni and had some old friends, to really just kind of work in a cafe and do more climate activism. But the job with Exmouth Town Council came up, and the job with the council it's interesting because Exmouth Town Council doesn't really have very many assets or land. So my job with the council as a climate change officer is very much about messaging and marketing and storytelling. So it actually was quite a smooth transition in a way, because I had built up this incredible knowledge of climate change thanks to Encaf and my work with Extinction Rebellion. And I could use all of that knowledge and training and experience and use that with my marketing and storytelling and teaching experience. So it was kind of a perfect match in a way. And that's what I do in Exmouth. It's a lot of public engagement, a lot of public education, a lot of kind of community activity, and not, as with many other climate officers, I don't spend a lot of time working out the carbon footprint of our buildings or our land, because we just don't really have any.
Well,
But yeah.
Well, since you've been there, you've done a tremendous amount of work. And if you look at your website, which I just put on the screen, you can see that in the sort of 2 years that you've been there, or however long, you have done a huge amount of things. And you've got a very, very, I think, good website. And, there is a lot of work and a lot of effort gone in that. I mean, if you'd like to pick out one or two things, I was thinking something like waste or food, but you may have other examples you want to give that you could tell us about that you've done since you've been there.
Yeah, so the first thing I did actually was to look at the Devon carbon plan, because there's obviously a plan that's county-wide, and I spoke with the climate team there to say, well, what could we do as a town within this county? And then I also worked with the district's climate change officer. So I wanted to kind of cascade from a county-wide plan down to a town plan, and look at what areas that we could influence in. And then I broke that plan into 5 categories: food, transport, energy, waste, and the natural environment. And I think that the areas that we've made the biggest impact in are probably waste and food. So to tackle waste, one of the first things I did was to introduce the Exmouth Cup. So this is our reusable cup scheme. So Exmouth Town Council, along with one of our with a private stakeholder, invested in 10,000 of these cups, and we've started to gift them to cafes who supported the scheme. And the cafe then has to offer the cup to their customers. It's a takeaway cup, and the customer drinks their drink and then returns the cup, clean or dirty, it's up to them, to one of the participating cafes for it to be lent out again. It is plastic, it's made from PPE, it's not recyclable, but the idea is that this cup will live forever in the system in Exmouth. So we've done a lot of promotions, a lot of campaigns. We've got a giant cup that somebody walks around in. We've got bus shelter advertisements. We've got a post box topper that our yarn bombers made. We've really put a lot of effort into this cup. We've done a lot of public education. We've done a lot of cafe education, and the cup now is circulating. So we've whittled the scheme down to only 3 cafes. We were a bit ambitious with 25. We've whittled it down to 3, and the cups are going out and coming back. So the scheme is working. When these cups get to end of life, there is a fantastic facility in Exeter where we can take them, and they will melt them down and turn them into garden furniture or something like that. So it will ultimately be, oh, my cat's decided to join. It will ultimately be recyclable, but it can't go into our recycling waste stream. So that was a big project for us, and a very visible sign that we were doing something tangible that we can say to sort of people in Exmouth, this is what we're doing. Use one of these cups, save all those disposables going into the general waste and going up to the incinerator. And anyone who knows me will know how much I loathe incinerators.
Okay. With someone's asked some questions very interesting, and then the two questions, maybe we can put them together. Someone said, why would a town council, as
Yeah.
opposed to a district council or a county council, why would a town council appoint a climate change officer? And then someone's asked, in your job, have you got the scope to create circularity in waste management, a circular economy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So it's unusual for a town council to have a climate change officer. I have met, I think, 2 or 3 others in the couple of years that I've been doing this. Mainly they're at district level or obviously at county level. We work really closely, and I'm trying to get as many towns to appoint climate change officers as possible, or to make it part of someone else's job. Different towns have different responsibilities, different powers and duties. We as a town council, you have limited powers and duties, but you have a huge amount of community engagement and a huge amount of influence, especially leading by example with your community. So it makes perfect sense for me, for every town council and parish council, to make climate change an essential part of somebody's job, and then to embed climate change and sustainability into all of their terms of reference. All of the committees and working parties that get together should have that baked in. So I'm really happy to work with other towns to achieve that, but that's not really my job. That's the job of East Devon District Council's climate change officer. So she's now working on a plan to help the different towns and parishes get up to speed. But I think it's really important to start at this grassroots level, because we have a lot of influence in the community. We also lobby pretty hard up to district and up to county level. And then to the second question about circularity, to an extent, I mean, I have been so frustrated and disappointed about the amount of agency we have in the waste stream. So the cups was such a learning curve, really. I've learnt to my disgust that most of the bins are street bins that are picked up by the district council. Nothing gets recycled, sadly. So if one of these bins goes into the recycling, initially I thought, oh no, it's going to contaminate the recycling. However, I have since learned that nothing gets recycled from our street bins. We have a really good recycling from curbside. That's a really good rate. We sort it at source at the curbside, and we've got like a 65% recycling, which is quite good. But we have very little agency about what happens to our waste, unfortunately, which I learned to my disappointment after about a year in the job, which is kind of why I then moved my focus to food and transport and other areas which I felt we had a bit more agency over.
Obviously, you engaged the community, and I was going to ask you about that, but you somewhat answered that. And being in a town council, you're closer to the community than you would be if you were in a county council. So you've made a lot of contacts there. But what was interested me about your Exmouth Cup, which is quite interesting to see, is that it raises interesting questions about how you communicate with your local population. I mean, some people say that we talk badly about climate change to people. We get too abstract, we get too highfalutin about it, and people don't relate to it very well. And so you've got to find a narrative that people can relate to. And that cup is a good example. You may think it's small, you may think it's insignificant in the grand scale of things, but it does connect people to a sustainability issue that you can take further. How important is it to do things like that, Zoey, that talks in a way that communities can understand and people can understand, so they can take the debate further?
I think it's really important. I mean, I rarely talk about climate change per se anymore. I have a campaign or a product or a sort of a plan around reducing waste or encouraging people to eat more plant-based food, and I tend to focus on the climate change aspect of that last. So with the big campaign that we're running at the moment is around reusable. So we're trying to get everyone into a reuse mindset. This is obviously reuse, but now we've moved on to hygiene products. So we're promoting and going into schools and talking about reusable period products. So we're going forward with this by saying these things are so much better for your health. These things are going to save you thousands of pounds in your lifetime, and they're also so much better for the planet. So I'm kind of leading with other aspects now. It's all tied into climate change for me and the biodiversity crisis, but I'm kind of talking to people about things that they can relate to, which is often Exmouth has some of the most deprived parts of the country, so it's often about talking to people how they can save money. We did a big campaign on save money and stay warm with Devon communities together, so we invited people in, we talked to them about cheap ways that they could make their houses warmer, and showed them different funds and grants that they could get to do that as well. So I probably talk less about climate change per se than I used to, and that is definitely more effective.
I mean, that's really interesting. I think we've got a lot to learn about that, because sometimes I think we talk in the wrong way. I'm going to let people in after my final question and get you to ask your questions as well. But the final question to you is, given the fact that you were in Encaf and you were active here and you went to Exmouth, do you miss Encaf?
I do, and I've forgotten how interesting the forums are as well, actually. I do miss Encaf. I miss my community in London, in Southgate. I miss a lot of my friends from Southgate as well. I've got a great network now in Exmouth, and I've met some really good people. But I've lived in London more than half my life, so yeah, I do miss London. I do miss these forums too, because I learn so much. I tend to join things like this a bit less these days. So yeah, I do.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. But you know, we miss you too. I mean, we said that I said that Zoe did a tremendous amount of work, and she did, but she also checked my typos. I had so many typos that without Zoe, they're all over the place now. So I do miss that. Anyhow, does anyone else have any questions? I see you have a question again. Oh, Beacon, do you want to come on?
Hello.
Yeah, we
Hello?
hear you.
All right then. My question to Zoe. Hello, Zoe.
Hello.
All right. So my name is Alon Kpeku from Nigeria. I'm also into waste management. So my question is the fact that, what are your plans, concerning, planned obsolescence? Then conscious consumerism. Consuming what is required in order to align with SDG 12, and then what are your country's plan about converting some of this waste into bio-CNG through the sequential microbial activities, through hydrolysis, methanolysis, associated rest. So
Sorry, can I just stop you? You're speaking really quickly, and I don't think I really understood the last. I don't understand exactly what you're saying, because you're speaking a bit quickly.
All right then. So my question is, what are your country's plan about conscious consumerism that aligns with SDG 12? Then secondly, what are your thoughts about planned obsolescence? Because at the end of the day, when some products are not recyclable, they end up in the waste stream. And
Yes.
Sir? Pardon?
Sorry. So yeah.
I said,
no, carry on. Carry on.
Okay, all right then. I said, what are your plans about planned obsolescence? I don't know if you know what is called planned obsolescence.
No, I don't know what that means. Sorry, I don't know what that means.
Okay. That is in waste management, planned obsolescence is the deliberate, intent by producer to make products not recyclable. Then my second question is that what are your plans about SDG 12, what is known as conscious consumerism, in order to enforce
What
the
does that mean?
advocacy?
Sorry, what does that mean?
Okay, conscious consumerism it's in aligned with SDG 12. That speaks to the fact that consuming what is required. Then the third question is circularity, given the fact that only 7.9% of material use. Hello?
Hello?
Only 7.9% of material use is eventually cycled back into the economy. So what are your plans about enforcing recycling?
So our plans our plans at town council level are pretty basic. We run workshops and we produce things like the Exmouth Cup, or we have educational workshops to talk to people about consuming less and to encourage people to buy less fast fashion, for instance, with clothes swaps. So we host a clothes swap once a month and invite people to bring clothes and swap them for other free clothes or shoes, accessories, and so on. So we do lots of small activations, if you like, to encourage people to think about buying less and sharing more and recycling and reusing. But as a town council, in terms of actual actions that are enforceable, that there isn't a huge amount that we can do at town council level, really.
Okay,
David, do you want to come in as well?
Okay.
David?
Yeah. Yes. How much help or hindrance do you get from the town councillors?
Oh dear,
Well,
that's an embarrassing question.
Where shall I start? No, to be fair, Exmouth Town Council has been really supportive, and they signed a climate emergency, declared a climate emergency back in 2019. They created a working party dedicated to the climate crisis immediately. They worked with Transition Exmouth on a 10-point plan immediately. They are very dedicated and very supportive. They hired me to kind of carry on the good work that the 10-point plan had sort of finished. They'd done that. One of the points was hire a climate officer. So they did. So we have a working party meeting once a month, which is a bit of a sort of talking shop. I kind of update them on the strategy and campaigns I'm running and activities, events and so on. We have a bit of a discussion. Obviously I can't spend any money without their approval, so I will go to them with proposals for various different things, and they yes or no that. So I'd say that I have a huge amount of free rein for an officer, a huge amount of responsibility, and a lot of independence, really. So I can't complain. My frustration is we're only a town council, but that's not the councillor's fault.
We've got a question from Patty Donegan, and it's quite interesting because she's talking about something which I gather the Council for the Protection of Rural England is taking up, and that is the paving of front gardens that is actually causing real problems on flood alleviation, causing real problems on carbon, on not absorbing carbon emissions. And they have a campaign to try and make sure that the gardens in the front are not paved over, that they're actually gardens. Is that something that you can do in your position, or you can advocate in your position in Exmouth?
Yeah, we can definitely advocate for that. We started to do that a little bit last year. We have a big campaign for gardens, getting people to rewild a bit of the garden, put in a pond, not pave over the front garden. We talk about water runoff. We encourage people to install water butts. We're also thinking about joining Nature Towns and Cities accreditation scheme. But we also are contemplating a tile whipping campaign. So this is something that happens in the Netherlands. They have tile whipping competitions, and this is whipping up the paving slabs, whipping up concrete slabs. And they do this, they compete towns against other towns. But I was thinking we could run a campaign to say, for every tile that you whip up in your garden, we would give you a packet of seeds, or we would give you something in exchange, and we could run it as a bit of a competition to see who whipped up the most tiles. And then if it was really popular, I can say to the district council, hey, why don't we do this, or to highways, why don't we do this on some of the land in Exmouth? Why don't we, get bigger with this campaign? So we are very aware, and we do try very hard. If we had any land, we would be able to lead by example even more, but sadly we don't.
Kathy says that if it's okay, she could send you the tip sheet that the waste group has created, our waste group, on the
absolutely.
back of the Front Gardens campaign of CPRE, which would be good. So I'll make sure you have Zoe's email address, Kathy, so you can do that. One of the interesting things you said when I talked to you the other day is that when you went to Exmouth, you were full of energy, wanting to do events after events after events, just like we did in Encaf. And you had to sit back after a while and say, you know, I've got to think more strategically. I've got to think about the strategy, which we have to do as well. And we've got the climate change officer coming to our next forum from Enfield, and it's a question we could ask her as well. She's into activities, but you know, what's the balance between doing things which takes so much energy and actually sitting down and taking a back seat and thinking about strategy?
Well, I think you need to do both. I think that I've done too many events and I've expected too many people in Exmouth to come to my events, and they do come, but it's always the same people, great, brilliant people, and we need to get together and we need to have events and we need to kind of bolster each other up. But my strategy now is to reach a wider audience. So instead of expecting people to come to me, we've actually decided to buy an upcycled tuk-tuk, which will have an electric battery. So it'll be electric tuk-tuk, and it will be like my mobile eco hub. So I'm going to go into the community in my tuk-tuk, which will look a bit like the Exmouth Cup. The branding will be similar. We'll plug it into the one small building that we have that has solar panels, so it will be powered by the sun. And my plan is to go into the community, because I spend a lot of money organising and time organising events, not money really. And I lean on community groups quite heavily to support me. I've built a team of volunteers, but I lean on them quite heavily. So I feel next I need to go into the community on my own, probably, and lean on my volunteers a little bit less. And I think probably 2 years ago when I first started, instead of trying to do all this by myself then, I should have lent on groups like Plastic Free Exmouth and Friends of the River Ex and, you know, Transition Exmouth and all those groups that were already established, who I do lean on now a lot more. I probably could have done that a bit sooner.
That was difficult for you early, wasn't it? Because you went into Exmouth like the Lone Ranger. I mean, you didn't have the contacts there, did you? And you had them here, so you had
but
to
I tell you
build
what, though,
them up.
we have a festival in Exmouth, a free festival called the Exmouth Festival, and we were tasked last year. We got some funding by the district to make it sustainable, to count the carbon footprint of the previous year's festival, and then make the 2024 festival even more carbon efficient. And so we did that, and we've now kind of embedded sustainability. We have an eco area, but we have compost loos, we have all our acts, all the performances are sort of leaning towards the story, which was Stories from the Sea this year, and it was around some sustainable theme last year. So we're sort of, I'm putting all my energy now into that one festival, which is enormous and nearly kills me. And I'm not going to do all the small things around it. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go out in my tuk-tuk and carry on with the workshops. And I go into schools a lot and talk to schools, which is fantastic. So I'm going to carry on doing that.
I think we can learn from each other about how to have a balanced life. It's not easy. Anybody else have a question before we finish this session? No? Okay, well, let's...
Sorry, I put my question in the chat. I just wondered, Zoe, does the town council have powers to ban single-use plastics and the throwaway takeaway packaging?
No, I don't think anyone has the powers to ban those, to be honest, but there will be a law soon that says that they have to take back that packaging. So every cafe over a certain size or establishment that sells takeaway drinks has to take back that packaging and recycle it. I don't know where they're going to recycle it all. Some of it isn't really recyclable, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I think that this packaging is a nightmare, and that's why I'm really pushing for people to bring their own packaging and move to reuse, because knowing what I know about the waste stream, it just doesn't seem like recycling all that stuff just is not the way forward.
Okay,
Having
all right.
spent a lot of time in Europe recently, it's a completely different culture in cafes there. You always have porcelain, proper cutlery, and they go and wash up.
Yeah,
And
I mean, we've been sold all of
gone the
this.
wrong way in the UK.
Yeah. Well, we've also been sold all this vegware nonsense as well. So the cafes think they're doing the right thing because it's compostable, and it's not compostable. Actually, that's a load of rubbish, or it goes into the waste stream and it just goes into general waste and it goes up to the incinerator. So yeah, all this, plant-based compostable packaging is such a load of greenwashing. It's very frustrating.
Can be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. That's great, and thank you, for taking part. Eric, thank you for your contribution and staying to the end, which is really good, and that was a really valuable part of the webinar today. And thank you all for your questions. We talked a lot about the circular economy today. And at the next forum, which will be on August the 28th, we decided that we would look at this debate between growth and no growth, the circular economy, the sharing economy. And we're going to look at plastics and how that relates to the circular economy. We've got Vera Bajad coming to talk about what Enfield is doing with the tool library and the repair cafes as well. And we're hoping that we haven't got the speaker yet, but we've contacted a couple of organisations to give an overview of what the circular economy is and how that can be embedded in how we plan our behaviour and our policies. So that we'll send out to you fairly soon. And so you'll know about that as well quite soon. So thank you. Is there anybody who wants to say anything before we conclude about anything?
Can I just add, in response to David, NALC, the National Association of Local Councils, is doing a sterling job to bring together town councils to tackle climate change. So last year they have a Style Council Awards system, and last year they introduced the Climate Response Award for the first time. A bit late, but better than never. And Exmouth Town Council won that, which was pretty cool. So I went up to the House of Lords and to see if we had won. We were one of 5 finalists and we had won. So we had to make a speech. And so I'd written my speech, which all the speeches were thank you speeches. And in my speech, I said how keen I'd been to get into the House of Lords for the last 10 years, really. And so I owed it to my activist friends to at least glue myself to something or spray something orange. And everybody in the House of Lords sort of went, oh! But obviously I didn't do that. But you know, it was quite funny to see the looks on their faces for a split second.
Right. Well, that's
But
interesting.
NALC is a great organisation. Yeah.
And also, it was great that you went to the House of Lords and you got that award. And yeah, thank you again. And it's good to see some people from GlobalNet on here, like David and like Michelle. I see you're here, Michelle, which is great. So thank you, everyone. And I hope you like us doing these forums this way, where we deal with topics and we get speakers in, because it becomes a really interesting time when we do it this way. So, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll finish this evening now. Oh, did you want to say anything, Eric? Eric,
Thank you. Okay.
Eric, you had your hand up.
Yes, just a parting comment. Thank you very much for inviting me to take part. It's been very interesting to see everyone's views, and I'm very heartened by the energy in the subject area. But just a quick word about the Foundation for Water Research, which is now no longer a standalone charity. It's now part of the Institution of Environmental Sciences, but its history was to produce a lot of reviews of current knowledge, booklets, and little volumes of interesting topics across the water spectrum. They're available online free. So if I send you the link for the email address, then perhaps you could disseminate that.
Yeah, if you do that, I'll put it in our newsletter when we send it out. I will do as we always do. I'll put the whole of this meeting up on YouTube. But I'm also going to put the presentations from Chloe, from Eric, and from Zoey as separate little YouTube videos as well. Take me not too long to do it, but I won't have it all done by tomorrow. But we'll get it done fairly soon. Anyhow, thank you all again. And, I hope to see you again at our next forum at the end of August.